All right, let's just jump right into this explainer and take a comprehensive snapshot of America on the historic weekend of its 250th birthday in July 2026. This isn't just about fireworks and parades. We're really going to dig into the hard data, the economic realities, and the shifting policies that are defining the nation at this exact quarter millennium mark. To get a read on where the country stands today, we're going to cover 5 key areas: America's 250th birthday, heat waves and the grid, a stable summer economy, the presidential portfolio, and health and housing shifts. Starting things off with Section 1, America's 250th birthday, celebrating the semi-quincentennial. You know, Nothing really captures the patriotic mood quite like this. A crack team of exactly 250 people literally getting together in Philadelphia to form a giant human Liberty Bell right on Independence Mall. It's just a fantastic visual of the scale and really the community focus of this semi-quincentennial. And we're seeing that everywhere, right? From the Great American State Fair taking over the National Mall in D.C., to historical reenactments like a Betsy Ross flag-raising ceremony in Philly. Americans are turning out in absolute droves. The whole country is basically awash in red, white, and blue this weekend. Moving on to Section 2, heat waves and the grid, a record-setting summer. But as the celebrations heat up, so is the actual temperature. The forecast for Philadelphia and a bunch of other eastern cities is hitting a blistering 101 degrees Fahrenheit. That officially makes this one of the hottest Independence Days on record. To put that into perspective, back on July 4th, 1776, Thomas Jefferson recorded a relatively mild 76 degrees. Today, we've got a massive heat dome just gripping much of the eastern U.S. Now here's where it gets tricky. This extreme heat is slamming right into a power grid that is already facing some massive new demands. Think about it. We've added almost 60 gigawatts of new resources, mostly solar and battery storage. But there's a catch, right? Solar is intermittent, and when you factor in the surging power needs from all these new artificial intelligence data centers, it completely changes the math. Add in drought-depleted reservoirs, and it's a perfect storm. It's gotten to the point where grid operators in the Mid-Atlantic actually got emergency permission to curtail power to data centers just to keep the lights on for everyone else if things get too tight. So what does this actually mean for your wallet? Well, between the grid streams and the soaring temps, the typical household is going to see summer cooling costs jump to nearly $800, actually $792 to be exact. That is up from $717 just last year, and it's a nearly 40% increase since 2020. Keeping cool has, quite literally, become a major financial pressure point for American families. Let's pivot to Section 3, a stable summer economy balancing the job market. Looking at the macroeconomic picture, the overarching theme here is definitely stabilization. Now, June's 57,000 added jobs might have missed Wall Street's expectations, but we really need to zoom out and look at the broader trend. We are in a vastly firmer position than the losses we saw late last year. In the second half of 2025, the economy was shedding around 8,000 jobs a month. Now, we're averaging a very steady, dependable 92,000 jobs added per month in the first half of this year. We also saw the June unemployment rate tick down to 4.2%, down from 4.3%. But the underlying math here is super fascinating. This drop wasn't because of some massive hiring spree. Actually, it was heavily influenced by 720,000 people leaving the labor force in a single month. That's a huge number, likely driven by a mix of demographic shifts like baby boomer retirements and changing immigration policies. When we dig into specific sectors, you can clearly see an economy in transition. Healthcare is absolutely booming, adding 47,000 jobs. But check this out. Those same AI data centers that are stressing out our power grid, they are actively driving job growth in manufacturing and construction. On the flip side, we're seeing continued job cuts in traditional IT, right in the midst of all this AI adoption. And then you have leisure and hospitality taking a surprising hit, losing 61,000 jobs. That kind of suggests that lower-income consumers might be tightening their belts and pulling back on summer spending. All right, Section 4, the presidential portfolio, politics, investments, and projects. This steady economic backdrop brings us to the highest levels of government. Financial disclosures that literally just dropped revealed President Trump earned an astonishing $1.4 billion last year from his cryptocurrency ventures. That includes netting about $800 million specifically from projects like World Liberty tokens. That is just a staggering financial windfall coming directly from the digital asset space. But it's worth noting that this massive windfall contrasts pretty sharply with the experience of retail investors who bought into those exact same assets before they crashed. Digital asset entrepreneur Morten Christensen summed it up pretty well after losing money on the tokens, saying, "In crypto, people say a game is a game. He played a better game than I did." It really highlights a stark divide in fortunes between the issuers of these assets and the everyday retail investors who had to navigate the wider crypto crash. And there's more in these disclosures. We also got to look at a precisely timed series of trades in the president's investment accounts back in April 2025. Here's how it played out. On April 3rd and 4th, hundreds of individual stocks were traded right after the announcement of global tariffs. Then, on April 8th, his accounts bought $3.6 million worth of 327 blue-chip stocks. The very next day, April 9th, he posted it was a great time to buy, paused his own tariff policies, and the markets completely boomed. As you might expect, the timing of those moves is currently drawing some intense scrutiny across the financial sector. Meanwhile, shifting over to public projects, we're seeing a really unique management style take shape. Interior Secretary Doug Burgum has basically stepped into the role of a personal project manager for the president's Washington, D.C. renovations. He's serving as the absolute point man for everything from sprucing up national monuments to revitalizing local golf courses. And, well, these high-profile renovations definitely haven't been without their share of drama. Take the Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool. It got a $16 million renovation to fix some leaks, but that ended up causing algae blooms and peeling sealant. And just this week, an Olympic canoeist named David Hearn was actually indicted on felony charges for allegedly pulling up some of that new peeling sealant. It's kind of wild, but it's a fascinating look at just how intensely scrutinized these federally managed national birthday preparations have become. Finally, Section 5, Health and Housing Shifts, Changes in Daily American Life. So how is all this shifting national policy filtering down to everyday Americans? Let's look at housing. Despite the fact that apartment construction is hitting a 15-year low nationally, New York City is experiencing an absolute building boom. They completed over 38,000 new housing units last year. To put that in perspective, that's up from around 20,000 back in 2020, making it the most units completed since a huge zoning rush way back in 1965. Driven by high rents and new zoning laws, developers are just breaking ground at a rapid pace across the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Queens. Yet even with all that new supply, the median rent for one-bedroom apartment in NYC just hit a record $4,000. In this immense financial and cultural pressure, it's spilling over into everyday recreation in some pretty unexpected ways. Take league bowling, of all things. Dedicated league bowlers are currently clashing with corporate chains like Lucky Strike. The core of it is that traditional bowlers are arguing the shift towards these noisy, neon-lit nightclub-style bowling environments is causing the veritable destruction of their community-focused pastime. But let's pivot to some big healthcare news. Medicare just launched a brand new pilot program called Bridge that slashes the cost of those massively popular GLP-1 weight loss drugs. Here's how it works. First, Medicare evaluates the patient's body mass index. Then the prescriber submits a prior authorization request. If the patient is eligible, their cost drops down to just a $50 monthly copay, saving some folks up to $400 a month. Assuming patients can navigate those bureaucratic steps, this is a real game changer that could shift the healthcare landscape for up to 20 million eligible seniors. So, as America celebrates its 250th birthday amid record-breaking heat, a stabilizing economy, and some pretty sweeping federal shifts, I want to leave you with this to ponder. We've got a transitioning job market, fascinating dynamics in our federal projects and investments, and a culture that's rapidly adapting to high costs and new healthcare horizons. How do you think this very specific groundwork laid right now in July 2026 will shape the nation's trajectory for its next chapter? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you on the next one.